Yeah. So I've been thinking about your question.
Yes. Okay. So let's just give an introduction for those who didn't read the question. So we this week's parsha is the parsha of Yishlach. The Yishlach means, and he sent. Jacob sent messengers to Eisev, his brother. We know that Jacob ran away. Yaakov ran away from Eisev under the direction of his parents. After he took the blessings that Eisev was supposed to get, Eisev wanted to kill him. So Yitzchak and Rivka sent Yaakov far away to Haran, Padan Aram, where Laban, Rivka's brother lived, and there, Deborah, if you don't mind putting it on mute when in between, just because I think we get a lot of the background noise from the train.
Oh, what did you say? I'm scared. I didn't hear what you said, Rabbi.
If you don't mind putting it on mute.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Of course.
As you're talking.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna try here. Can't seem to get up to.
When you find it. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Rabbi, you should be able to put it on
get off
mute.
because I can't seem to get the.
I can do it for you. I'm going to mute you, but if you want to,
just mute me. Yes, mute me. I can't do it.
Say something, just put your hand up.
Yeah, no worries. Yes, thank you.
So they were 20 years. It was now 22 years that or 20 years, 21 years maybe, that Yaakov had been away from his parents. He'd been away from Eisev, and he had married Rachel, Leah, and Rachel, and worked for 7 years for each one. He'd also married Bilhah and Zilpah, the maids, and he had the 12 tribes and his daughter Dinah. Then he worked for another 6 years for Lavan before he left, after 20 years of being with him. And now Yaakov is heading back into the land of Israel, where he's going to encounter his brother Eisev, who hated him with all of his heart and wanted to kill him for taking the blessings that Eisev believed he should have received. So Jacob does a bunch of different things to find out where Eisev is holding. He sends various gifts he sends angels, and he sends various gifts towards Eisev to find out why is Eisev saying, does he still want to kill me? Does he still want to wipe me out? And not only do they find out that Eisev still wants to kill him, that Eisev actually is together with 400 men, 400 soldiers, and they're coming. Their plan is to wipe out Jacob and his family completely. Yaakov becomes scared, naturally so, and he does a few different things to prepare. He prays to Hashem. Well, first he strategizes. He plans in case there'll have to be a battle, and he divides his estate between his family and everybody else, everything else that he owned. And he also sent more gifts to Eisev to try to appease him. But the message that Yaakov is getting back from Eisev is that that there's no plan to make peace. Eisev wants to kill you. And then we finally have the encounter in the third section of this week's parsha, where Yaakov comes with his family, and he's walking towards Eisev after he crossed over the water. After he crossed over the water, he comes to the other side, and he's going towards Eisev, and he bows down. He bows down 7 times on the ground. He prostrates himself. Eisev sees this, and he runs towards him, and they hug each other. Eisev falls on his shoulder. He embraces him completely, and he kisses Yaakov. And then there's the conversation that comes after that, where Eisev suggests that his people will go with, he said he doesn't want to take anything from Yaakov. He suggests that instead his escort should go along to help Yaakov and his family. And Yaakov turns down the offer. He says, we'll go, we're a slower group because we have young children and sheep. So we'll go at our own pace, but we'll meet eventually. And Chassidus, it's also explained, I think it's brought from the Midrash, that when he said we'll meet eventually, he wasn't looking just to tell Eisev something which he didn't mean, which is like, he wanted to avoid him or to get rid of him. So he said, I'll meet you somewhere else. But the point is that everything from Eisev and Yaakov all the way through history is part of the transformation of the world that Hashem wants the Jewish people to do. Yaakov is our forefather. Yaakov was the one who started it. And when Mashiach comes, we will go to the land which is Eisav's land, and there all the nations will bow down to Hashem. And the point is that the refinement of Eisav won't happen right away. It will happen over time. It will happen over the generations of the work that the Jewish people are doing. Now I'm going to put a Rashi on the screen in a second. Before we get to the Rashi, the question that we had, that I put in the email, is how could it be that Eisav changed so fast, so quickly, from a deep hate to Yaakov? It wasn't just hate; it was hate that came with wanting to kill him. He hated Yaakov, with all of his heart. And suddenly, and all of the build-up, Yaakov is sending messages, and they're finding out that Eisav still hates him. That hadn't changed. And suddenly that changes in one moment that Eisav kisses him. He hugs him and he kisses him. How is it that Eisav had such a strong emotion and feeling to Yaakov, and that should change so fast from the way he was feeling to him before? Go on.
Well, my feeling was that Eisav was genuinely moved when he saw Jacob and his family, his procession, and he fell on him and kissed him. And I think that feeling was true and sincere for the moment, but not overall. I think that when they separated, Eisav went back to probably hating him. And what I've read is, I don't know Hebrew. I certainly don't know Hebrew grammar. I suppose that Hebrew, at least biblical Hebrew, did not have quotation marks or italics. And I've read that the word kiss, it has dots over it to distinguish it from other verbs. And so that makes kiss. We should look at it in a special way. Was that kiss genuine? How long did it last? Does it mean that the kiss was greater than he felt or less than he felt? I don't know that.
Okay, very good. So we're onto something over here that even though Eisav, you're saying that even though Eisav hates Yaakov, in that moment it changed.
Yeah, and it changed temporarily.
Yeah, just to go on, David.
Yeah, part of this discussion I remember from an earlier year, some of those nuances, but I have a thought.
Before? I don't remember teaching this one before.
Then maybe I just read it someplace or in an earlier year. But the thing that I haven't read anywhere, but it comes to my mind, is it would seem to me that the wrestling with the angel might have something to do with it, because after he beat the angel, that might soften something. Even though I haven't read it anywhere, it just seems that given what angels are and what that was, that there might be a relationship at some level.
That would make sense, but he still came with the 400 men, and they left. They left him.
But he'd already started with the 400 men before the angel, because the other one went a day ahead.
I understand, but why did the 400 men? Why was he still with them if he was planning to make peace, or he felt love to Jacob? The point of the 400 men was militant.
And then Jacob's angels went to the 400 men and did something as well. So there's a few things at the angel level on both sides that may have softened this, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know what those connections are, but and I haven't read that anywhere, but it just seems to me that would be at play at some level.
Mm-hmm. Good explanation. It may have to do with what was happening at the moment. Like Robin mentioned before, that he didn't actually change his mind. He didn't change the way he felt, but something happened. Something was going on during that time. So Rashi says about how he hugged, how Eisev and Yaakov hugged, that when he saw Yaakov prostrating himself, one time after the next, 7 times, he was aroused. His emotions were aroused, and that arousal was enough to make Eisev in that moment want to hug Jacob. But a kiss is more than that. A kiss is a very deep expression of a feeling from one person to another. And that's a question that doesn't answer how he was able to, from a feeling of hate to a feeling of great love. It seems too extreme that he should change in one moment. So that's what what Robin mentioned before, in the Torah scroll, there are dots. I don't know if it's not quotation marks, it's dots that are on top of the word Vayishakeo, and he kissed him. It's the few times in the Torah where you have dots. The Torah doesn't have vowels. These are not vowels either. These are dots on top of the word. Now, Rashi doesn't always look to explain why there are dots. In the places where there are dots, he doesn't always explain it. So he doesn't explain why words are written with a vav or without a vav. This is not Rashi's job. Rashi's job is to explain to us, to the 5-year-old child that opens up the Chumash, who has questions that come out, that things that don't add up for him. So Rashi's job is to answer those questions, not to explain why the Torah scroll has dots. But in this case, Rashi brings the idea of the dots to answer the question that we have when we open up the Chumash, which is the question that we just asked. How could it be that he changed from such an extreme of hate to love to be able to kiss his brother? Let me share the screen. Okay. Does everybody hear me? Yes? You do? Okay. Zoom's changed the settings, so now you can share a screen and be heard. That's great. We need Rashi over here also. Where's Rashi gone? To Rashi's commentary. Here we go. So we already spoke about the hug, the embrace, and kissed him. You see in the gray box, the second paragraph in the gray box. So Vayishakeo, and he kissed him. Nakadalav, there are dots over the word. Yesh cholke badavar, that there is a controversy concerning this matter in the Bright of Sifri. It's brought in a few other places also, and a little different. But in this place, it's brought as follows. Yesh darshan kudazu shalei shakib cholibe. Some interpret the dots to mean that he did not kiss him wholeheartedly. He didn't really mean it. That makes sense in a way, because why would he change so fast from a strong hate to such a great love to be able to kiss Yaakov? So the dots come to answer our questions. Our question that he didn't kiss him with his whole heart. He brings another opinion. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Rabbi Shimon the son of Yochai says, Halachahi. Indeed, like the first opinion that we just said, is well-known tradition. It's the law. So the halacha is the law that Eisev hated Jacob. Ella, his compassion was moved at that time. He was aroused, and he kissed him wholeheartedly. So we have two opinions. One is that even though it doesn't really, it doesn't really, it's hard to understand, but somehow, sorry. The first opinion is that indeed it wasn't genuine. It wasn't with his full heart. So that makes sense. That fits with that answers our question. Second opinion is that it wasn't genuine, meaning he hates, Eisev hates Yaakov. That's not going to change. That's a law that's set in stone. But in that moment, something happened. There was a great arousal that he was able to, that his compassion was expressed strongly. He was able to love, to kiss Yaakov. The point over here is halacha. It's a law, meaning it's a rule. It's set in stone. As we know, halacha, Jewish law especially, law in general, but especially Jewish law, doesn't change. It doesn't. It's the foundations that were set in place. Once we've decided, once the law has been determined, it's law in Torah, and it stays like that forever. So the fact that Eisev hates Yaakov, this is the law. This is set in stone. This can't change. But there could be times when we override the law. The law is still there. The law is not going anywhere, but we are overriding it with a one-time exception. For example, we have the story of Elijah the prophet. This is the example that's always brought in Torah for Hora'at Sha'ah. Hora'at Sha'ah means a rule, a law that was given. Oh, sorry, not a rule. Hora'ah is it's a instruction, a one-time instruction from God. So we have sometimes a one-time instruction that, even though the norm is the usual way is a certain thing, but sometimes there'll be a one-time thing that's changed. Offering up sacrifices outside of the temple is prohibited. Was prohibited. From when the first temple was built, all sacrifices had to be brought inside of the temple. Before that, in Israel, they were able to build altars and offer up sacrifices in other places also. It didn't have to be the tabernacle. But once the temple was built, it could only be inside of the temple, and we have a verse in Torah, in Deuteronomy, that tells us that. But there was one time when the Jewish people were serving idols, and there was a lot of assimilation happening. And you had the priests, the prophets of they weren't real prophets, but the false prophets of the pagans that were trying to convince the Jews that God is really the Baal, which is the idol. And that's who we should be offering sacrifices to. So Elijah the prophet had to prove the Jewish people otherwise. It wasn't good enough for him to sit and debate them and explain to them, because that obviously wasn't enough to convince them that what's true is Hashem. So he made a deal with the people of the Baal that you will offer up your sacrifice outside of the temple on the mountain. I'll offer up my sacrifice, and whichever one when the fire comes down from God and eats up the sacrifice, whichever sacrifice is burned up, that is going to be the one. That is the true God. And indeed, that's what happened. How could Elijah the prophet offer up a sacrifice outside of the temple? It's prohibited. This was a Hirah Shah. Hashem told him. He had a special instruction from God. Elijah the prophet was a prophet. He had conversation with Hashem. And Hashem told him, this is what has to happen. The law is still there. The law is not changing. The fact is that sacrifices can only be offered up in the temple and it's prohibited to offer up a sacrifice outside of the temple. But I am giving you an instruction that even though the law is still is not changing, this time you should do different. This time we're going to override the law. We also find in last week's parsha, we're usually tricking another person. Cheating another person is against the Torah. It's prohibited. But Yaakov, under the instruction of his mother Rivka, who was a woman of God, she understood what was right. She directed him to go and to trick his brother Eisev to get the blessings. And those blessings didn't change. Once Isaac gave him the blessings, Yitzchak said to him, you know, he still blesses Eisev, but the blessings were supposed to go to Yaakov, because this was the instruction, the one-time instruction, the way things are supposed to be in that moment. And the same is over here. The general position is Eisev hates Yaakov. But he had a moment of great emotion where he was aroused. And therefore, according to the second opinion, which is the opinion which is brought by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the one who we celebrate his passing on Lag BaOmer, celebrate because he asked us that we should celebrate his passing. So he says that this was an exception.
We can even look at it as our first example of cognitive dissonance.
What is the reason for Rashi to bring the second opinion? Meaning Rashi doesn't always bring multiple opinions from the Torah. He brings two opinions. One is that it wasn't genuine, the kiss, and the other one was that it was an exception to the rule. It overrided the regular rule. Why does Rashi want to teach us a second opinion, which tells us that he did kiss him with his wholeheartedly, which seems difficult to understand. If he hated him so badly and he still hates him, how could he change to want to express his love so deeply through a kiss to Yaakov? This is because the rest of the next few verses after this continue in the same direction. We see that Eisev continues to exhibit love or friendship, connection to Yaakov. He offers to send his people with him, and it wasn't that. And he cries while he embraces him. These are all things that show that there was some kind of change in that moment. It seems like Eisev did genuinely feel a feeling of love towards Yaakov during that time. So it's possible that he kissed him with his whole heart. Go on, David.
Then why would that have been Rashi's second opinion? Because the second one is not as good as the first.
Very good. Good question. It's explained. I mean,
maybe I'll just say one other thing.
I think he doesn't say clearly, or he doesn't really answer that question straight out over here, even though it was part of the question in the first place. Why was it brought as a second opinion? But I think if he still hates, remember, he still hates Yaakov. To be able to kiss him, yes, maybe he's able to not kill him. Maybe he's able to even offer him help. But to kiss him, it means that he feels something very strongly to Yaakov. But deep down, we're saying that he was aroused emotionally, but his will, his desire, his real feelings, his real opinion but still deep down that he wants the end of Yaakov. We find that even at the end of his life, by the way, it's brought in the Talmud that when Yaakov was being buried, in the Machpelah tomb together with Isaac and Abraham and Sarah and Rebecca and Leah, that Eisev was fighting. He wanted to be buried there instead. He said, it belongs to me. So the fight continued, or the disagreement, so that the feelings that Eisev had towards Yaakov was continued afterwards.
So it seems to me that these are not actually alternative descriptions, but they might both be true at the same time at different levels, because we have different levels in this. What's that? We're unless we're fully integrated, we can have different sets of feelings at the same time at different levels in us. Some can be buried more deeply and some can be higher up. So it would seem to me those two could also both be quite true, but they're referring to different parts of him. But the thing I also wanted to bring, I have trouble.
Eisev was certainly a traumatized person, so he certainly had all of his different parts were expressing differently. Yeah.
So the other thing that when I look at this, I look at it in a slightly different way, in the sense that Jacob did a lot of preparation for the meeting, including prayer. So Hashem can overrule any of these things. We're talking about a human being operating like a normal human being, but Hashem, in fact, breaking the law, if he did, when going against what's halacha, is in essence Hashem's grace. So if we look at Hashem's grace in this whole thing, it doesn't seem astounding to me that the behavior could seem at one level strange, because going beyond nature is what Hashem does. Very often, it's not, Hashem isn't confined to nature. So we're kind of trying to evaluate it through our logic and nature. But if we add in the dimension of beyond nature, then these questions are not nearly as challenging.
Well, I mean, that explains how he kissed him, wholeheartedly in that moment, and how he was able to continue to show, some kind of
and
interest
even not even just how, but why? Like, why did that happen? Well, Hashem said, I don't want Jacob to die now. So, all of this is kind of ordained by Hashem at some level, and these are just the details.
100% is ordained by Hashem, but it's a second opinion. Meaning, we don't stuff miracles into Torah. We don't look, unless we know something is a miracle, or we're forced to say it's a miracle. Unless we're forced to say something is a miracle, we don't say it's a miracle.
But why can't it be the response of a prayer?
The hail, one example, there's multiple examples when there was the hail by the 10 plagues. Why was the fire and ice together in the hail? The plague, according to Rashi, says it was fire and ice together. Why can't you just say, or it says that the hail got stuck in the middle of the sky and it stopped falling and it stayed in the middle of the sky where it was. That's an extra miracle. You don't need to be extra miracles. We don't add extra miracles unless we have to have. So we can try to understand Eisev naturally, say, how could it be that he expresses love so deeply to Yaakov? To say that he was able to do that, in the moment, it's still difficult to understand. Unless we say that it's a miracle. Maybe.
I see people that are angry one moment and happy the next. This is human nature.
Happy and angry is not kissing somebody.
He looked at Eisev looked at Yaakov. He hasn't seen him in over 20 years, and I think that he was genuinely moved when he saw him with brotherly love.
Yeah, so he hugged him.
So he hugged him, and then he was really moved, and maybe he saw that Hashem was with him. He had that insight that Jacob, everything that happened, was getting the birthright, all that stuff was for this purpose, and he sees it being fulfilled in his brother. And
that's, that is actually a beautiful explanation, but it doesn't. But it didn't change. But the fact is that it didn't change him. So
It
it was
did
only in
change
the
him.
moment. Didn't change him, meaning that he remained Eisev. He remained
Right.
with
That's what I was saying in the beginning. It was for the moment. It didn't last.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a silly comparison to youth, not for me. We used to have a cat named Jessie Diana, and when we would go away for a few days, we'd have a cat sitter. She missed us, and when we'd come back, she was very happy to see us and she was all over us. But the next day, after she slept on it and remembered how angry she was, she wouldn't look at us for the next couple of days.
Yeah. Yep. So it was an emotional moment. Yeah. Rashi brings the explanation from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Usually he doesn't bring the names of the ones who said the different explanations. Every explanation in Torah comes from a source. I mean, many of them it doesn't say who said it. It just is brought down in the Talmud or in the Mishnah or in the Midrash or whatever it is. But in this case, there are actually different versions of it in different places. There's one that says that he kissed him with his whole heart. And the one that says that he kissed him genuinely. Rashi doesn't bring that opinion. Because even if he kissed him with his whole heart, it wasn't really genuinely. If deep down he still hated him. He brings specifically this version, and he brings it with the name of the one who said it, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we know the story of how he hid in the cave for 13 years, running away from the Romans. The Romans as a nation is Edom. Edom are the descendants of Eisev. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had, he had experience with Eisev and his descendants. He understood them, and he knew that Eisev hates Yaakov. They hate us. They want to wipe us out. He had to spend 13 years away from his family, hiding in a cave with his son, just because he might be killed. But it also says in the Talmud that when there was one time when they needed to send a messenger to the king of the king of Rome, they sent Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Why did they send him? Because he was known to have lots of miracles happening to him. He had lots of experience with miracles. He was a man of God that had a lot of experience with miracles. So they chose Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And indeed, he went to the king of Rome. He asked there was a decree against the Jewish people. He attempted to have it removed. It was removed. And they said, whatever you want, we'll give you, because he was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There was a special miracle that happened to him. I think this connects really well. This really fits in line with what you said before, that there was miracles over here. There was the hand of Hashem in this. That Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai knew that the Romans hate us, Eisev hates us, Eisev hates Yaakov, but it's possible that with the help of Hashem, for the moment, things can be changed. Things can be altered for the moment. We're not removing the rule. The rule is still there, but we're overriding it. We're defying it for the moment. So even though Eisev hates Yaakov, it was possible in that moment, and through the build-up and everything else, and Hashem's hand in this, that Eisev could kiss him with his whole heart, and Eisev could actually express a feeling of love to Yaakov, which was then expressed in the verses that follow, even though deep down his hate and his desire to wipe Yaakov off the map was still there. I think that the message from this, this is also the way when the Rebbe when the Rebbe said this teaching, like many other teachings, he connected it with the situation in Israel. Many people want to try to try to explain, try to say that they don't really hate us. It's just because of this reason and another reason and whatever it is, and we can if we fix this and we fix that, and if we did this different, then we can make peace. We'll have peace. And that really the whole world is looking to help us. Look at our good friend America, that are sending aircraft and sending their people to the Middle East. America wants to help us, and the whole world wants to help us, but we can't fool ourselves. The way the law was set up, the way Hashem set things up, is that anti-Semitism and the feeling that many nations, especially Eisev's descendants, have to the Jewish people is not one of love. On the contrary. Does that mean that we have to always be in war? Does it mean that the people always have to suffer? God forbid. We say God forbid, but it's happening right now. God is, it's war is happening. But if they really hate us, then we're stuck. We're going to be in this forever. And the answer is that this meeting of Yaakov and Eisev, like we said before, was the beginning of a journey of the Jewish people, which continued throughout the generation, continues today. And the point is that love which was expressed in that moment, that kiss, it wasn't genuine in the moment. It wasn't fully, aligned with the way Eisev felt at the moment. But that eventually we'll be able to make that the norm, to make that to make the love the real thing. But we have to accept that Eisev hates Yaakov. And we can't ignore those facts. How do we make more encounters like the one that Yaakov had with Eisev, ones where the love is expressed, but a feeling of friendship or being able to work together is expressed, which is why Eisev offered help to Yaakov afterwards, even though deep down he still hated him. That is when we live like Yaakov lived. We live like Yaakov lived. When Yaakov sent his messengers in the beginning of the parsha, when he sent the angels to Eisev, he said the words "Im Lavan Garti." I lived as a stranger with Lavan, with Laban. And I was always a stranger. I wasn't never fully accepted, but I lived with Lavan. The word Garti, which means I lived, also has the numerical value of 613. And the message is that Rashi brings down is that Yaakov was telling Eisev, I lived with Lavan like a stranger, but I fulfilled all 613 mitzvahs. I did the mitzvahs that Hashem gave me. And because of that, I was able to handle living with Lavan all that time. And that is part of what inspired Eisev to be able to have that encounter with Yaakov. It was all a build-up. That sending those messengers was a build-up to this encounter. So when we live our lives in a way which is in line with Yaakov, fulfill the mitzvahs, stay connected with Hashem, be proud of who we are as Jews, be proud of our land, be proud of our people, be proud of the fact that we're different. Doesn't mean that we're better. Doesn't mean that we're more. It doesn't make us, better just in our essence. We're the chosen people, and we're chosen for responsibility to live according to the way Hashem wants us to live, which that makes us indeed the chosen people. And when we live in that way, we are a light to the nations. We send a message to Eisev, to the enemy, that there's reasons to embrace us, and there's reasons to work with us and to help us. So instead of trying to pretend that there's love and everyone gets along, and to jump the gun, and meanwhile end with more suffering and more pain, we can stand strong as a people, be proud as a people, be proud with our land, be proud with the laws of the Torah, which say that when something endangers the security of the Jewish people, we have to do everything to secure our people, not to take other things into context. And when we do that, and each of us personally we all have a part in this. We all have a part in this situation that's happening now in Israel. It applies to all of us. We're all part of the Jewish people. We all can do our part for the battle, is by adding in light, adding in mitzvahs, adding in good deeds, that we will hopefully send the right messages to our neighbors and to and to America and to everybody else, that deep down it's not that they love us, they have their own interests in mind. But when we do what we have to do, they'll support us and they'll protect us, because Hashem will send his help through whoever hands he needs. There's a lot more to talk about this idea, but it's just I figured this teaching teaching about Eisev and Yaakov is very in line with everything that's happening right now.
Well, I hadn't thought of it that way. Thanks. That's good.
Yeah, Sherry, sorry?
I wanted to just thank you and say this is a message that's very powerful right now. Thank you.
Peace will happen when it happens, when Hashem is ready to make peace, to give us peace. But we have to do what's needed for security before we get to peace. And that's the way Hashem wants us to live. That's, not just in Israel, around, everywhere. We have to protect ourselves spiritually and physically.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very good. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And take care. Bye now. Bye, Deborah. Nice having you with us, and hope the visit goes well with your mom. Hope she gets out of the hospital soon. You're on mute, so if you're trying to